A lot of my success with this labor and birth being everything that I wanted it to be just comes with the perspective that I gained with my first birth. Hey friends, Alexis here. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the ways I prepared for my second unmedicated birth, as well as techniques that I used during labor and how I feel I set myself up for success in achieving my goals for this labor and this birth. And if you're here with similar goals, I hope that you take something away from this video. If nothing else, I hope you gain some perspective on what birth can be like. And I want to preface this video before I go any further by saying birth and labor, they unfold in their own unique ways. Every woman and pregnancy and baby and circumstance is completely unique. So sometimes the less than ideal thing happens, and that's okay. However your baby is born, however you choose to labor and birth your baby, it is what is supposed to be. But if you're here kind of looking for information or insight or just perspective, I hope that you will leave with some of that. And as always with my videos, take what serves you, please, and leave the rest. First, I'm going to go over some of the things that I did to prepare my body and my mind, as well as like my home for the labor and birth that I wanted to achieve, and the ways that I feel I set myself up for success. And then I'm going to get into some of the specific techniques that I used during labor that helped me to cope with contractions and really to bring my baby into this world in the way that I wanted to the most. So let's get into this with some of the ways that I prepared for this labor and birth. So before I even became pregnant this third time with our second baby that's been born, I was experiencing infertility issues. And so I spent quite a bit of time, I would say like 2-ish years, really working on detoxifying and cleansing my body, and then really deeply nourishing my body following that detoxification period. And this is ideal, really. If somebody can do the detoxification and the nourishing work that needs to be done on their body prior to conception, that's always the best thing. But if not, then just really taking care of your body while you are pregnant and nourishing yourself really well, and even using some very gentle and mild detoxification approaches. And really that kind of comes down to diet, and you can use herbs to support your body in different ways through pregnancy. So that was definitely the preface for even conceiving this third time. And I'm sure I will share about that in other videos, so stick around if you want to hear more about that story. With this pregnancy, towards the end, I feel like my body just really craved more alkaline foods, but I really wanted the hydration from fruit. They give you lots of energy, and I felt like my body really needed that towards the end. I really needed light meals because I had this huge belly out front. The next thing that I think is huge, and I did a lot of this in my first pregnancy, and that's to research all things around pregnancy, labor, birth, like really looking at what are your options, what kind of cascade of interventions happen with certain routes that you might take during labor and postpartum. What kinds of things do you want to have done to yourself, to your baby? Really doing your research, making informed decisions, knowing what you want. That's a big thing. It's just like knowing what you want, because if you know what you want, you can stand for it. When you know what you want, you can set up your circumstances better, usually, to be able to achieve the goals that you might have. that leads me to choosing a birth team and a birthing location that you feel the most supported in and the safest in and the most respected in. For me, for my first pregnancy and for this third pregnancy and second birth, we went with a team of midwives in our area. With my first pregnancy, I was kind of on the fence between wanting to give birth at a birth center versus at home. I wasn't really sure, but then kind of talking with my husband about it, we both just felt like birthing at a birth center would just be the easiest and the most relaxed and comfortable. My next advice, and one of the things that really helped me the most, I think, with both of my births, was to prime my mind first with positive birth stories. Yes, the less than ideal can happen. Different circumstances can arise throughout a labor, throughout a birth. You might change your mind on something that you thought you were totally set on as you're going through your labor and your birth, and that's totally fine. But I think that the general idea that most people in our culture have around birth is that it's a medical event, it's painful, it's scary, you're not in control, the professionals know how to do it better than you. And so if you first prime your mind with positive birth stories, I think you are much more likely to recognize that your body was actually designed for this. Your body was actually built for this. And there's a lot of information and techniques that you can utilize and harness to achieve a birth that you feel really, really good about. Right along with priming your mind with positive birth stories comes the task of educating yourself on potential risks, things that might not be ideal that arise during labor and birth, and even during pregnancy, and deciding for yourself as much as you can what you would want to have done in those circumstances. And as much as you can, visualize and mentally try to put yourself into those certain situations and in a way visualize or act out what it would feel like or be like to be in that situation, and bringing yourself to an acceptance of the way that your labor and your birth could unfold potentially. I think this for me really helped to just ground me in the fact that I'm not 100% in control of really any situation in my life. But during pregnancy, labor, and birth, and even postpartum, you don't know how things are going to play out. Things don't always happen the way that you would like them to, or in the way that's optimal or ideal. So as much as you can accept that, I think the easier it is to just relax into your labor and your birth as well, because you have your plan for how you want things to go and you can prepare yourself in that way. But if you're preparing yourself also for what's unknown, that's as ideal, I think, as you can get. Now, something that I can't recommend highly enough for expecting women is to see a chiropractor throughout your pregnancy. Ideally, if you can see a chiropractor from the beginning of your pregnancy through to the end and postpartum for you and your baby, that's the best. But if nothing else, at least in the last couple of months of your pregnancy, to prepare your body for the birth, to really balance it and strengthen it. So finding a chiropractor that's experienced and that you trust, that is absolutely great. But I also paired my chiropractic adjustments with stretching to loosen up my hips a little bit and loosen up my back and my shoulders and different muscle groups and things like that, different tendons. And I'll put some resources for all the different things that I'm kind of mentioning in this video. I'll put them down in the description for you to explore. the next thing that I did was to practice a positive mindset. Some people like to use affirmations or scriptures throughout their pregnancy as they're kind of thinking about and preparing for labor and birth. That's like the mental portion of it, is trying to have a positive perspective on what the experience can be like, for one, and then looking for tools and sayings or scriptures that are going to uplift you and encourage you and help to keep your mind in that positive space. So I never did like hypnobirthing or anything like that, but with my first pregnancy, I made a little affirmation banner. And actually, right before this birth, I had scripture cards printed, and I didn't even get to go pick them up because she decided to come the next day after they were printed. But I think that played a part in me being ready to like have this baby, was that I had picked out and dwelt on and meditated on these scriptures that I wanted to help me through labor and birth. So while I didn't necessarily like recite them or read them or have anybody say them out loud to me, I feel like they were in me. But the other thing too that kind of goes along with this and like the positive mindset is practicing not complaining. There are so many things during pregnancy that can be uncomfortable or just like stressful or less than ideal, and just things in life too. But as you're going through your pregnancy, and especially as you're getting closer to your labor and your birth, really practicing that resiliency to not be set off by little things, and to really just try and look at things in a positive light, or at least being neutral on them, and not letting little complaints escape your lips. For me, I think I tried to make light of them. Like I tried to make them like a funny thing. So yeah, I was feeling lots of pressure and like grinding on my cervix in the last couple of weeks, and it was just like, whoo, this baby's trying to escape, right? Like instead of, oh my gosh, this sucks, like this is so uncomfortable. Definitely check out some of the links in the description that go more into detail about positions, and then practice these positions while you're pregnant so that you can effortlessly, without a lot of thought, get into them while you're laboring. If you have good practice with the breathing techniques that you want to use, then it's going to be easier to apply them when you're in labor. Last thing in this part of the video is just preparing for postpartum. Some of the ways that I did that was having like nursing baskets ready, having a toiletries basket ready, doing some like deep cleaning in the nooks and crannies of my house, like really letting that nesting urge take over me and doing what I could to feel like I had our home prepared to welcome this baby and to welcome whatever this new transition was going to throw our way, since we have an older daughter, things of that nature. So preparing food, making sure that you have nourishing food in your freezer, making sure that you have people who might be able to bring you meals when you're postpartum. So just having some things in place that will allow you to just rest and relax in the last weeks of pregnancy. Or even if it's the last few days like it was for me, that's a great way to just give your mind the signal that like, we're ready for this baby, they can come when they're ready, and this is going to be as smooth as it can go. So before I get into this next part of the video where I talk more in detail about the specific techniques I used for labor and birth and how I feel they helped me to achieve my goals, I'm going to share with you some of the goals that I had. That way you can see why they were helpful and why I used certain techniques. So my first goal was that I did not want to swear during labor. With my first labor and birth, once I hit transition and I felt that like urge to bear down and the urge to push, I didn't really know how to cope with those sensations. I'd never felt them before. So I was cursing like a sailor. And it's something I'm not proud of, but I'm not a swearer anymore. The good Lord saved me from that one. I just feel like it's not me, and it wasn't helpful. And then my second goal was that I didn't want to tear. With my first birth, because I was just like pushing and pushing, and I didn't have the insight and the techniques that I needed to cope with sensations like the ring of fire and those urges to push. I ended up tearing a small tear. I had like 3 stitches, which made recovery go a little bit longer. So I knew that I would need some techniques to help me get through those sensations. From the start of labor, I would say that what was most helpful is just staying occupied, just keeping yourself busy, comfortable, of course, and listening to your body and like timing contractions and things like that. But being occupied and kind of keeping my mind off of things just helped me to like just get through them, just get through the contractions. The next thing that was extremely helpful for me this time was deep breathing. I would breathe in really deeply, as deep as I could during the start of my contractions, and then I would let that air out like as slow as I could while making like either a shushing sound and then deep inhale in and then moaning as you exhale. As I was in the earlier stage of labor, the most comfortable position for me to get into was like I had my knees far apart. So having your knees and your legs like open or wide apart, that really helps to open the inlet of your pelvis where your baby is trying to descend into. I really took seriously that technique of relaxing and releasing tension when I would notice I was having tension anywhere. And so while I was going through contractions, I might notice that like I was squeezing my face and I would relax my face. Or if I felt like I was pursing my lips, I would blow my air out to like relax my lips. I would do that. Same thing when I was holding my husband's hand. I wanted his strong hand in mine, but it wasn't so that I could squeeze it. I wasn't like trying to do the death grip on him. And if I noticed I was squeezing his hand, I would relax it. If I noticed my shoulders were coming up, I would just make them come down while going through contractions, kind of shifting that focus from the sensation of the contraction to the different areas of tension in your body. Like it really helped, I think, the contractions to feel shorter because I wasn't just focusing on what the sensation felt like. I was focusing on what I could do about it. And that was releasing tension in other parts of my body. One thing that was making it difficult for me to do this a few times during labor while I was at the birth center was that I would get cold. I was starting to tense up and like kind of like shiver, and you can't relax like when you're cold, right? You're tense and you're shivering. So I made sure that I did what I could to be warm, take a warm shower, put on my husband's big fleece jacket, put on a big fuzzy blanket, use a heating pad. Like I wanted to stay warm so that I could relax where tension was building in my body during contractions. And I'll tell you, when I did this laying on my side, there was a few contractions when I felt this baby descend a lot with each of the contractions that I felt, and being relaxed helped that to happen. Okay, and this was something that I kind of mentioned in the first part of this video. That is making sure that you have the support people there for your labor and your birth that you want to be there, and that you don't have anybody there that you don't want to be there. So really like protecting that space. I didn't invite my mom into the space. I didn't invite my husband's mom into the space. I didn't have a cousin or a sister or a friend there. Like for me, I had the minimum amount of people that I wanted there, and like that's it. But ultimately, if you feel comfortable and safe with who's around you during your labor and your birth, you are going to be much better off and well on your way towards achieving the goals that you have. Next important thing, and I kind of already touched on this, but nourishing yourself during labor. I had lots of coconut water, fresh juice, fresh fruits. Like, this is what I fueled my body with in the days leading up to labor and the weeks leading up to labor, and while I was in labor, and right after my baby was born. And these foods, like, they give you so much energy. It's not heavy, it's not demanding on your digestion. So, and everyone's a little bit different, but for me, these foods feel really good in my body, and I feel like they helped me to have the energy and the focus and the clarity that I wanted and needed to have during labor. Kind of touching on one of the previous techniques of positioning, just moving around, being able to move your body, being able to shift positions, having somebody help you get to the bathroom, and just knowing what positions to put your body into for relief, for making progress, for helping baby to descend, for helping baby to come out, like just being aware of what these positions are, and ideally having practiced them prior to your labor. As a substitution for all the swearing that I didn't want to do during this labor and birth, here's how I applied positive coaching phrases. Anytime that I would feel my mind wandering to a place that was negative, or if I wanted to like dwell on a negative thought, I wouldn't let myself, and then I would coach myself out loud with a positive phrase. So here are some examples of what I said to myself. I think my favorite one is, and I'm having fun. This is fun. And another one was, this is exactly what I wanted, or I can definitely do this again, talking about another contraction, or I will definitely do this again, talking about being pregnant again and having another labor and birth. But I was using these phrases when I wanted to say, this sucks, or this is so uncomfortable. When is this going to be over? It was like, I can do this again. I'm having fun. Like, this, really working with my baby and working with my team to bring this baby out of my body, like, and into my family, into the world. Like, that is fun. That is so awesome. One of the things that I really needed during contractions was complete quiet. So oftentimes I would do my deep inhale, and then I would shush everyone as I was exhaling. And everyone in my space was respectful of that. They got super quiet, and I could just focus on applying the techniques that I needed to apply through my contractions. Utilizing water was very helpful for me. With my first labor and birth, I spent a lot of that time in our shower. And with that birth, I really wanted to get in the bath at one point, but after also laboring in the shower at the birth center for quite a long time, they told me basically I used up all the hot water, so I couldn't get in the bath. And I ended up delivering our baby on the bed, which was fine. But with this labor, it was much shorter, and I did utilize the shower to warm up a bit, but it was an open shower, so it wasn't as helpful as an enclosed shower would have been. I really wanted to make use of the tub, and so I did. And I feel like as soon as I got into the tub, the sensations changed a lot. Now, when it came to baby descending through the birth canal and coming out of my body, I utilized the technique of breathing up or panting. And when I started to feel the slightest bit of stretching as baby was crowning and what would be called the ring of fire, as soon as I started to feel any little bit of that, for one, I would apply a little bit more of that counter pressure with my hand, and I would pant or I would breathe up. And I just really let this baby come out slow and controlled. I talked a little bit before about the inlet of opening your knees wide, opening your pelvis so that the baby's head can like start to go into the pelvis. But then as this baby's head and shoulders are ready to come out, I needed to open the outlet of the pelvis. So the way that I did this was I leaned back from being on like hands and knees. And at first my knees were open, but I made myself put my knees in and my feet out. I pushed one time and baby's shoulders came out and the rest of the body, and I had my baby. And it was so awesome. And I'm still on such a high of how incredibly well this labor and birth went, and just how well I was able to stay on top of the sensations and my mindset, and really utilizing the different techniques that I had learned about and practiced during my pregnancy. So if you found any of the techniques or the tips or the advice in this video helpful, I would seriously appreciate a comment, a thumbs up, a subscribe, so that more women can find this video and learn some of the things that might be helpful to them in achieving their personal goals for labor and birth. And again, be sure to check out the description box below, where I will have links to some of the videos that I watched and any other resources I maybe have mentioned or that I think you will find helpful in preparing for your own labor and birth. So that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and you'll see me in the next video.